Well, good afternoon, ladies, and welcome to tonight's Menopause Mixer. I am your host, Elena Watkins. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I am waiting for you ladies to join me. Make sure that you comment to let us know that you're here because once again, we have this amazing guest who is going to spend time with us this afternoon, evening for some of you, Barb Sobel. So she is a clinical nutritionist. Now, ladies, we have talked about what to do about weight gain, hot flashes, and everything in between so many times before. But tonight's special guest is going to give us some whole foods that we can consume, where we can find these whole foods, why they're going to be good for us on this amazing journey, and some of the benefits outside of just menopause that you will experience once we shift and put those things in our diet. Now, I'm sitting so you only see this part. I'm going to do a shameless plug here, just one quick second before I bring Barb on. I'm going to do this shameless plug because I purposely set my camera so you could only see the top part of my shirt because I had these shirts specially created for my WTF, which you all have heard me talk about before. And now I'm going to unveil this shirt to you. Okay, so just hold tight. See that? WTF, where's the fan? Don't you love it? So, okay, that's my shameless plug. The WTF. So, you guys will see this in the group. I am finally like unveiling it. It took me a minute to find somebody that could like do the replica of me holding the fan. And that came from the whole thing with me with People Magazine, like loving me trying to make hot flashes sexy with my bling fan that I had. So that's what this silhouette is. It took a couple of renditions from that. So anyway, I digress from that. My WTF is now official and it's been given the thumbs up from me to be produced. Okay, so that's the WTF shirt. There we go. We'll see it again. All of you latecomers, WTF. All right, so where's the fan? All right, back to tonight's menopause mixer. So Barb Sobel. So I want to bring her on because she's here with me. And hey, Barb.
Hi, I love that shirt.
Yes, thank
That's
you. You like
awesome.
my shirt? I did a little
I love it.
quick unveiling of that tonight. So I have just been dying to get my fan, the whole silhouette with the where's the fan thing going. And I couldn't quite get it right, but I think we're there. So where's the fan? We hope for these shirts to be like mass produced one day. And we'll have all these men or women walking around talking about where's the fan, where's the fan, where's the
I
fan.
love it. Love it.
But tonight, we're talking about whole foods that can aid us in weight loss during the transitional period as we're going through perimenopause, midlife, and all that in between. And Barb, you are a clinical nutritionist by your background and your professional, and you use functional medicine approach, which I'll let you explain to the viewers a little bit more in depth. But I like the functional medicine approach, and I want you to explain that to our viewers and our listeners because it does make a difference. Because I like the fact that with functional medicine, we try to dig into the root cause and not
Exactly.
necessarily what you're presenting as symptomology wise. So that's why I really find that functional medicine a lot of times can, and it can work closely with, traditional medicine as well, but it's oftentimes helping to lead us to more of the root cause and kind of taking that approach with it. So, welcome, Barb. Explain
Thank
a
you.
little bit of that before we delve into it.
Yes. What drew me to functional medicine is really looking for the root cause because if we just address symptoms, we just keep addressing the symptoms and not
Mhm.
what's underneath. And if we can address what's underneath and we can change that, then maybe we don't need medication, maybe we don't need interventions, and we can get rid of those symptoms. The other thing that's really important, I think, about functional medicine is we look at the whole person and
Yes.
we look at diet, lifestyle. There's a place for medication, there's a place for food, addressing sleep, movement, community, stress in our lives. So it's very integrated and looking at the whole person. And
Right.
I really appreciate that because we're not just a symptom. We are a whole person.
Exactly. Yeah. And I always think that for me, especially when I'm working with clients, And it's so hard sometimes to get them to like not think about the symptom, but to think beyond, because we're so used to, because we're the one experiencing whatever that particular symptom is, that all we want is for to receive relief from that. We just want it
Right.
better. We just want, and so oftentimes to try and get your client to think beyond that, like, where did it start? What happened? What are you feeling before, during, after? What did you do? What did you consume? It seems like a lot. They just want
Yeah.
it resolved. Like, I don't want to have to think about all that, right? So
Right.
sometimes it's difficult to get people to really understand that, yeah, there is a root cause. It didn't just pop up. Like, there's something creating or causing this particular symptom
Right.
to
Or
manifest.
imbalance or something.
Yeah.
Right. And I like to look at it as a both or an
Mhm.
and in there. Can we do something in the short term to
Right.
address the symptom, but can we also address what's happening, the root of it, so that we don't have it forever?
Absolutely. Right. Yep. So we can kind of, again, mitigate,
Yeah.
manage it, get rid of it, whatever the case may be. All right, I want to welcome a few of you that are joining us this evening. Before I delve right into it, now we're just scratching the surface with Barb telling us about functional medicine, and we're going to dive right into it. However, I wanted to welcome you to tonight's show. So, welcome, Veronica. She says, hello and greetings from the low country. Hey, Veronica, welcome. Then we got Darlacia, Najee. Thank you both for joining us tonight, and Rebo. So I am welcoming you all, and Veronica, hey, for you out in the low country. So welcome. Drop your comments in the chat. Drop any questions that you may have. We know that weight gain is like one of the top 5 issues that women complain about, and or just talk about, or struggle with, or are confused with when it comes to menopause or going through midlife. So I would like for you, Barb, just to start off with kind of giving us a few whole foods, or what are some things that we can utilize in our diet to sort of mitigate and or help us manage with the weight gain. We know about eating healthy. We know about trying to eat nutrient dense foods, but give us just your insight on clients that you've worked with, that you have had seen, or that they've reported some positive results.
Yeah. I think the first thing is protein.
Mm-hmm.
People, my clients who eat a protein-rich diet, especially at breakfast, have less hunger later in the day. So they're
Mm-hmm.
satisfied longer. They don't need a snack in the morning. They eat a good lunch. They don't need a snack. They don't always need a snack in the afternoon. So they're just they don't need to consume as many calories.
Right.
So that's a big piece. So that would be, eggs in the morning, maybe Greek yogurt or cottage cheese if you can handle dairy. Maybe it's a combination of things, maybe a little bit of some, thinking out of the box. We think about how people might eat in different countries. They might have fish in the morning or meat in the morning, maybe not meat, but, a form of animal protein.
Right. I will have salmon because I eat pescatarian, so I have
Yeah.
had salmon and
Yeah.
eggs in the morning. So that's not, too far-fetched or not heard
No,
of.
not at all. I love salmon in the morning, and
Mhm.
when it's cold here, I will occasionally do like a really thick, stewy chicken and vegetable soup. And to me, it's quite comforting in the morning because it's warm.
Mhm.
So that's a good way to get in some protein. Some people will also do like a hash type of a thing where they might do
Mhm.
some ground turkey, throw in some vegetables, maybe even put an egg on top of it.
Okay. And what's the purpose of that? I know that eating protein does help me to feel fuller, right? So oftentimes I work out in the morning. So more times than not, I'll cardio fast, which just means I don't eat prior to working out. So when I'm
Mhm.
done, I am famished. So I typically will then kind of do a lot of protein after. So it does keep me fairly full throughout the peak part of the day.
Yeah.
What is the benefit to that as we think about the whole thing about weight gain slash weight loss in this case, or maintaining weight? What
Yeah.
is what tell us, I guess, what's the mechanism of the protein outside of making us really feel full?
So a couple things. One, protein. There's a couple things interesting with protein. One, of all the nutrients, it takes the most energy for us to break it up into usable form. So we actually use more calories when we're breaking down protein to use it in our body than we do with carbohydrates, even though gram for gram, it's the same amount of protein, same amount of calories when we eat them. So the work our body is doing, our metabolism speeds up to use up more of these calories to get the protein into, break it down so that we can use it. Another thing, it helps stabilize our blood sugar. So we're not having rises that we then have to push in a lot of insulin. And that when we're constantly pushing in insulin into our bloodstream, we tend to hold weight in around our middle and gain weight. So protein is very blood sugar balancing. So that's another aspect that's really important with protein.
Mm-hmm.
When you compare protein with fats and protein with carbohydrates, fats have the most calories per gram. So protein, especially lean protein, has a pretty low calorie profile.
Okay, good. So I know,
So it's sort of on both sides of it, it's beneficial.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Good. And that's what I wanted you to explain, because that was a good explanation of why protein is so important. Again, I just want the viewers to understand, like, they may hear these things, but I truly just want them to understand the mechanism of it and what it does for them internally, and how it works and what the benefit of it is. Rather than just saying, oh, I need to eat protein, I need to eat protein. I want them to understand the mechanism and why it's so important and what's actually happening when you're consuming these protein.
I mean, I think one other thing that's really important, we need protein for muscle growth.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're working out and you're eating enough protein, you're going to build muscle. Muscle is more metabolically active than fat. So when you're sleeping, your metabolism is going to be higher.
Exactly.
So especially as we get older and go through perimenopause and menopause and beyond, we need more protein because we lose muscle mass unless we are actively trying to build it. And protein is the basic nutrient that helps do that.
Right. I always say protein is queen or king.
It is queen. Yeah.
Protein, truly, honestly.
All right, it's got the crown on. Yeah.
Right. It's like number one, honestly. Like, I always try to, and it's so funny because obviously leading up to this, protein was something that, okay, if I ate it, I ate it. I didn't, really think about it too much. It was more of carbs and calories that you tend to kind of pay attention to leading up to when you get to perimenopause, or that transitional stage. Again, it's because of the way our body processes these things at this point, at this juncture. So what are some whole foods specifically? I know we talked about eggs, Greek yogurt, salmon, any other, like chicken, turkey. I know we talked about those being definitely protein rich foods. Are there specific whole foods that you encourage your clients to consume regularly when they're looking at what I always say is doing that healthy swap in their diet? Because likely most of the ladies that are on tonight's show probably would want to do some cleansing of their diet, right? Some cleanup of some things that they're probably consuming, and they want to replace it. So I always think of it in terms of a healthy swap, meaning what are you currently eating that you could eat less of or get rid of and replace it with what? So what are some foods that you would encourage women to do a healthy swap with?
So I think how foods are cooked is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we can eat the same food. So maybe something that is fried, we want to bake or grill or saute instead. So I'm thinking of a chicken, a fish, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
We might want to look at leaner cuts of certain things. So we're going to eat maybe a burger or a piece of meat, we want to go for the leaner cut with that. Okay. I think there are some foods that we need to look at the amount we're eating, because sometimes that's a problem. So nuts fall in that category. I love nuts. They're delicious. But I can overeat them, and many of my clients can overeat them. So that's
Yeah.
something I think it's a healthy food. Sometimes we need to eat a little bit less of.
Right. So I do, it's funny that you said that because one of my clients, that's something that she started to. So when she was doing a healthy swap, she found that she really enjoyed nuts.
Yeah.
And the problem became she started to consume them every day, probably too much.
And they're easy to grab 2,
Mhm.
3, 4 handfuls of. That's the problem.
Yes, yeah, and so that's what started happening with her, and her job, she drives a lot, so it was easy for her to just kinda grab and go,
Yeah.
while she was driving, and she was thinking that this was again, it was a healthy swap, but it was too much
Yeah.
of the
Exactly.
that grain,
Yeah.
so that was an issue, that we had to kinda look at for her when I kind of had her do, like, a journal, and I said, "Oh, I see that you eat quite a bit of nuts," and she's like, "Oh, I eat them by the handfuls every day, all day." And I thought, yeah, that's not quite what we
It's
want
just
you to do.
Right, it's just
Although
not helping your weight loss goals, right?
mhm,
Because it's so
yeah, yeah.
dominant. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's why we ended up revisiting it because, um, she was on a weight loss journey and she was doing well, but I think again, when she made that healthy swap, it became just too much of the same thing and
Right.
not realizing because remember, we put it under the healthy foods, and so she was just consuming them, but just not realizing that it was, kinda giving her the opposite effect of what she intended it for because she was eating way too many nuts.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
way too many nuts.
And that brings up a good point. I mean, there are some really delicious foods out there, and if they trigger us to eat too many of them, we sometimes want to put limits on them.
Mhm.
So, and I'm sure you talk about this with your clients. Maybe if you want to buy nuts, can you get single servings, or can you make single servings of them, or can you eat them in condiment size?
Right.
Not as a main thing,
Mhm.
but as the
Condiment,
extra
yeah.
little delicious part on the top.
Right, and that's kinda what we ended up switching to well, me giving her, a tip to do is, uh, to baggie them, like,
Yeah.
put them in smaller portions and only have that not the entire container or bag sort of on your passenger seat and just, mindlessly eating, which was kind of what was happening,
Yeah.
to avoid eating some other things that she would normally have, a candy bar or cupcake or whatever was her food of choice that she swapped it out for. It was just that, trying to um, have her eat it in moderation and just do it,
Yeah.
like you said, as condiment size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another great snack item that I like, a lot of my clients want something crunchy in the afternoon,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
sometimes salty. So, I always say first, there's all these vegetables that you could have: cucumber, carrot, celery, radish, jicama, things like that, that are going to give you phytonutrients and fiber and vitamins. But another thing that I really like that gives us a lot of fiber and a little bit of protein is roasted garbanzo beans, which you can flavor in all sorts of ways. You just throw
Mhm.
them out on a baking sheet and put them in the oven until they get all dried out and crisp and crunchy.
Mhm.
And I find that that's a good swap for something like a potato chip,
Yeah. Mhm.
right? That's going to really affect our blood sugar, has a lot of empty calories. And the garbanzo beans, or you could use another kind of bean as well. You can flavor with herbs and spices. You can put a little bit of salt on them, whatever seems delicious to you.
Right. Yeah. In my transition, that was one of the snacks that I would try, and I can tell you that I honestly did not think that I would like it.
Yeah.
But I did, and it was actually okay. It was really good, and it was during the time where, like what you were saying, you would reach for something and again, this goes back to doing the assessment to find out what you're eating, what you like,
Yeah.
and what foods are you reaching for. Like, you wouldn't know that you needed to replace and do a healthy swap with something salty and crunchy if you weren't doing the assessment to find out, "Oh, okay, after I have lunch at work, I tend to reach for a salty candy, candy bar, sweetened salt caramel, or a bag of chips or whatever." It's a
Pretzels
matter
yeah.
of really looking to see what you are craving or what you're wanting, and then finding a healthy replacement or a healthy swap for that. And so I honestly can tell you that I did not care for that at first, but I also knew that I did want something crunchy in the afternoons, usually around 2 to 3. I'm
Hmm.
looking for something a little crunchy. And so that was one of the snacks that I had tried, and it was actually pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what I like about it is you can flavor it any way you want. You could make it Indian spiced. You could make it ranch spice. You can make it taco spice. And it does have some fiber in it, a lot of fiber, and it does have some protein in it.
Yeah.
So it gives you a nutritional punch. And
Yeah.
especially if you put spices on it, you're getting the whatever is in those nutrients too.
Yeah, it takes on whatever that particular
Yeah.
flavoring is. I think I found a bag of them or something similar at Aldi's here
Uh-huh.
where I live, and they were really good. So
Yeah.
yeah, I ended up trying that out. Let me see. There was a question. Let me see if I can find. Oh, somebody said that sounds yummy. I don't know who that was. Said it sounds yummy. That was Veronica. Said that sounds yummy.
From the low country.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. So again, welcome to the show. Tracy, how are you? ZM Jones and Marche, welcome to tonight's discussion. We are talking about whole foods or just foods that we can utilize and do healthy swaps so that as we're getting on our healthy journey and our weight loss, that we can incorporate these foods without totally trashing your diet and just going all in. Because I find that when we do that, when we trash our diets, we tend to go back to what we know and what tastes good and what makes us feel good. So, incorporating these foods into your diet slowly, shifting, looking at what you're eating, and just picking up a few of these foods as you're transitioning, to me, is the best way to see results because you're not totally changing your diet all at once, along with dealing with the changes that you're experiencing all at once. It just tends to become too much.
Yeah. Last year, I set a personal goal to try a new recipe or a new food every single week.
Mm-hmm.
And I included in it a new dish if I went to a restaurant or I was traveling or something like that. But that way I kept accountable to always trying something new,
Right.
but not get overwhelmed with all sorts of weird things in the refrigerator that I
Mm-hmm.
didn't end up cooking and ended up throwing away, or taking too much time at the end of the day. Most of us don't have a ton of time.
Right.
So this way I could plan out one thing at a time. And
See.
I did a lot of fun things.
Yeah, that was good. I did a little bit of that, and then I think for me it was like what you said. I don't think I did one like every week. I think for me it was like every, maybe I would say couple weeks, every
Yeah.
other. It was just as long as within a reasonable time frame, I was trying something new because I am one to just, okay, I go to a restaurant, I'm gonna get salmon, right? But that I can just rat it off because I know what I'm going to get. And so I was like, you know what? Let me just try some other things, kind of on the menu when I
Yeah.
was out. Not so much me home cooking, miss don't like to cook, but trying to get my husband to even try things. It's just he and I. So we're empty nesters. So I have to like think about, okay, what am I eating? What am I trying? What can I get him to try? And there were things that he would say, okay, that looks yummy, let me try it. And then he would. But when you're trying to, again, incorporate new foods, that can be a challenge when it's
Yeah.
just you, especially if you're the one cooking, if you're the one grocery shopping. You can tend to have, 20 items for the household and then another new 3 or 4 or 5 for you, which goes back to what we talk about all the time. People that are in your household, in your immediate family, in your circle, they need to know why you're making these changes, why suddenly you're eating more healthier, eating more, green foods, more, whole foods, more alive foods, less processed foods, and why that's beneficial to you. And then hopefully some of that, because you're the one shopping and cooking, will also translate into their diets as well. Because most of us don't want to cook 2 separate meals.
No. And most of us are not short order cooks.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I will say with my clients, I work a lot with women, and I have had many times I've worked with a woman with her diet, and then she's come back 6 months later and said, "Oh, my husband just went and had his labs done, and he's doing better than he's ever done." Or
Yeah.
his doctor doesn't know what he's doing and wants
Mhm.
to take him off his cholesterol medicine. And
Yeah.
it's really because he's changed his diet too, because you're the one cooking.
because I was going to say by osmosis, basically, because
Yeah,
she's cooking,
yeah,
he's reaping the benefits, right?
exactly. Yeah,
So, and that goes back to, like you said, you may not necessarily change the type of foods, but even what you said a few minutes ago, how you're cooking them. So, even if you no longer, fry and do things like that, you can bake or
yeah,
broil, grill. Those are better, healthier ways to prepare your foods. So, it may not mean that you're necessarily changing what they're eating, but you may be choosing how you prepare it.
yeah. I'm a really big fan of getting a big sheet pan. I usually put down some parchment paper because it helps with cleanup. And
Mhm.
I'll put a lot of different vegetables on it, toss some olive oil and usually some salt and pepper. Sometimes I up my spices, but usually I keep it really simple because many of the bitter vegetables turn sweet.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
find that things like radishes, even broccoli that can be bitter, get a much softer, sweeter, and they're much more palatable. So if
Mhm.
you're not, or you or someone in your house, not a lover of some of those more bitter vegetables, they can really shift the flavor when you roast it.
Yeah, a shift their palate, and they're not even realizing that it's good because you've, kinda like you said, taken some of the bitterness out of it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So you can still eat those whole fresh foods, but they're different. They just taste, you know, they're and it works with kids too because they're
Yeah.
not so bitter.
Perfect. All right. So I want to put you up on screen, spotlight you there, and
Okay.
just if there is something specific that you can sort of give the ladies as it relates to our nutritional needs and our during this time as we're in transition, what would does that look like? What would that be?
So we talked about protein, number one. I
Mhm.
think vegetables or plant foods being vegetables, fruits, legumes, beans, nuts and seeds, spices and herbs, but really focusing most on vegetables give us vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients that are all really important for keeping us healthy, but they also are rich in fiber. And fiber is going to keep us full. Fiber is going to keep us, it's going to help stabilize our blood sugar. So it's a really important nutrient that comes in plant foods. And some plant foods have more than others. So things like raspberries and some of the chia seeds and flax seeds and things like that are really high in fiber. But vegetables in general, I think should be, I usually recommend that they're the biggest portion of our diet. And I really break that into several categories. There's the leafy greens, the lettuces and um, spinach and arugula and things like that are sort of natural detoxifiers for us. There's the cruciferous vegetables, the broccoli, kale, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts that again help detoxify, especially estrogens, are really rich in fiber. There's colorful fruits and vegetables. So every one of those different colors gives us different nutrients. So whether it's tomatoes or green beans or beets, anything that's in those colors, they all give us different nutrients. So there are some healthy fats that are plant fats, so things like olive oil and avocado. And then I love fermented foods. So things like there's fermented dairy, but there's also fermented vegetables that are really popular in all sorts of different cultures. So things like kimchi and sauerkraut, chutney, some of the salsas that are fermented that we might see in in the Mexican culture. So there's all sorts of these fermented vegetables that help feed the good bacteria in our gut. And we're learning more and more and more about how our bacteria in our gut
Mhm.
is really playing a role
Yep.
in all of our health, our immune system, our
Mhm.
mood, our how we process estrogens, our cardiovascular health, as well as our how our digestion is.
Exactly. And that I was so happy when you said you wanted to break that down, um, into, so we talk a lot about vegetables, right? And how, but adding in protein.
Yeah.
So most of the time when I'm talking to my clients, and even these ladies who are joining us tonight, so again, thank you ladies for joining us, and those that'll watch the replay, it's easy. So we want to make this so that it's not so challenging for us to have to think about, right? We don't want to have to think of what we need to consume when we're thinking, how do I get this? How do I get, what Barb and Delana said, we need to get protein and we need to get, how do I get that in our diet? What is the easiest way for us to get these foods, both the protein that you spoke about, the fiber, the vegetables, the fermented foods, give me like a meal. So these ladies that are on here right now, let's just say somebody's in the grocery store watching us, or
Yeah.
somebody's home getting ready to prepare dinner. What would be a good meal that they could prepare that would kind of fit all of those things into a meal from those categories? What's a
Yeah.
good meal?
So there's a couple things are my go-tos, and they're pretty plain, and then I spice them up on the finishing end. So I think let's use salmon as an example.
Yes, my favorite. Okay,
Your
yep, let's start
favorite. So
there.
we'll
Let's
get
go
some
there.
salmon or some chicken fillets, whatever.
Mhm.
I love a sheet pan meal. I love
Yes.
it because I
Okay.
will put the protein on there, roughly a palm size portion per person. So if you live with someone who's larger than you, they might need a little bit more, but or smaller might need a little bit less. But roughly, your 3-4 ounces of protein, and then fill up the rest of the pan with vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get to the table, you might want to put salsa on it, chimichurri sauce. You might want to squeeze lemon on it. You might want to take a spoonful of kimchi and use that as your condiment, or fermented hot sauce, or maybe you make a tahini sauce and make it a little more Mediterranean. And I find that if you make it really plain, you can have leftovers the next day. So there's your lunch.
Right.
And so you get 2 meals out of one.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
another thing, I love soup for the same reason. I can make one big thing of soup, can eat it multiple days. I can freeze some of it. So I'm not always having to cook. I might not cook a salmon soup, but certainly a chicken soup or a vegetable soup that then I could serve alongside something. And the other trick I do almost every week is I will go to the market on the weekend. I'll make a giant salad with a lot of cut up vegetables. I wrap it in a dish towel. I usually use like a dark one so that vegetables don't stain it. And I do a big bowl. I usually listen to podcasts or something while I do it. And then all week, I just pull out a couple handfuls at a time. And I have instant salad with a lot of different vegetables. And it might take me an hour once a week, and then it's just done.
And it's over. Good. So that was good. I was just going to ask you about that, because typically when you're asking or when you're telling people, clients, whomever, what it is you should consume, and you're thinking, okay, first thing you're saying, eat the colorful fruits and vegetables. And the first thing that pops in their heads is, oh, I'm going to make a bunch of salads.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to always have salads, right?
No.
You can incorporate your vegetables, like she said, along with a protein. So
soup is a great way to do that.
Yeah.
Excellent. You can make a big pot of vegetable soup, and it's good for a whole week. And then the sheet pan meal has been a savior for me because it's fast. And you can buy things that are already cut if you don't have time to chop them.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
To save on the prep time.
Yeah. And certain things like butternut squash are really hard to cut. I'd rather.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely buy mine already cut up. Again, Aldi's is my friend. They offer that kind of stuff already cut up and prepared most often. So again, I'm not one of your biggest cooks, but I do know, like Barb said, if you start simple and just add to it, to start with your protein and then add your vegetables. It's almost like start with whatever your protein's going to be and dress it up and make it look cute.
Exactly.
You start with your fish or your chicken or your turkey or, whatever your protein is going to be, and then dress that up and make it look cute, make it look pretty with your vegetables.
Right. And you can use herbs and spices too. And I think, really it's important not to think we have to have a gourmet meal every night. Our goal is
Mhm.
really to nourish ourselves. And it's wonderful if we can have a special, extra delicious dinner, but don't let perfection be the enemy of, getting to what we really want, which is to nourish our body.
Right,
And
absolutely.
simple food, it's easy to do it that way.
To nourish it, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so I
Yeah.
wanted to see if there's another question that I wanted to touch upon. I think we've covered, primarily what it was that I wanted to share with the ladies tonight, but I wanna make sure that I don't have any questions, in the chat from any of the ladies. Because I think the other questions that we had was, about we talked about the lean protein, the lean meats, the healthy fats. Of course, you talked about the avocado, using, olive oil,
Right.
fiber-rich foods in our diet, help regulating the blood sugar. I wanted to make sure we stress that. That's another big thing because when we don't regulate our blood sugar, we tend to continue to chase our blood sugar, which is why we crave wanting to eat sweet foods
Right.
and salty foods, yeah,
Right.
so that's really
One thing I wanted to add, and this comes up a lot with midlife women. With a lot of women, there are foods we always were able to eat, and sometimes we get to midlife, we're more sensitive to them.
Mhm.
So I see that our digestion might not be as good. Maybe it's something like dairy, and we get some discomfort when we eat them. So we have to be willing to really listen to our body. And if a food, even if it's one of our favorite foods, and it doesn't agree with us anymore, we have to be able to at least put it aside for a little bit, can make sure it's really that food, and sort of separate it, because it might not be as good for us anymore when we've gone through this transition. And I see that happen a lot.
Oh, yeah. That's another thing I get. I see women talking about that in the group, about their sensitivities with things that they used to be able to eat and process that
Yeah.
they're now struggling with and having a difficult time, enjoying it, right? They no
Yeah.
longer can, digest it. And like you said, set it to the side. And again, let's see, it goes back to what I talked about a few moments ago, how sometimes when we just have to see what is it that we're doing? Is it really that food that you're unable
Right.
to digest, or is it something that you're combining it with, or whatever? You have to, really do your due diligence to figure out what it is that you're consuming. Maybe it's what you're consuming it along with, even the time of day, even what you're using to wash it down with, right? To
Right.
drink. Yeah,
Yeah.
all of those things can play into it. We're just a little bit more on the sensitive side, now as we're going through the transition than we once were. And all of that goes back to the hormones. Our hormones are still, regulating themselves throughout the transition.
And it doesn't always mean we need to give it up forever, but sometimes we
Mhm.
need to take a little vacation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
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 But I do think tracking is the best way to figure
Mhm.
that out.
Exactly. Yep. You hear me say that all the time. Track your triggers, track
Yeah.
what you're eating, journaling. It will really give you a lot of insight into, not only what you're experiencing, but maybe even your relationship to food as well as to,
Mhm.
what's going on. So a lot can be told just from, tracking it. It may seem like it's a chore. Oh, I can't. But honestly, you will find out a lot, just based on what it is that you are seeing if you're truly tracking and paying attention to the foods that you're consuming and then what your body is telling you with the consumption of that food. All right, Barbara. So I'm going to put your website up.
Great.
Tell our viewers where they can find you and, if you have any special classes coming up, any workshops.
So I'm on Instagram. It's Barbara Sobel _nutrition, and Barbara Sobel nutrition on and I'm also on Facebook at Barb Sobel Nutrition. And I don't have any classes coming up right now. I am planning on doing a blood sugar class later this spring.
Okay.
So if you're interested, just shoot me an email. My email's on my website, and I'll add you to the list. I have a newsletter I send out a couple times a month, and I'm pretty active, most active on Instagram. So I'd love to connect with people there, continue the conversation.
Absolutely. So yes, I was getting ready to say anything that, especially if you're watching this on the replay, and you have a specific question about anything that we shared tonight, make sure that you reach out to Barb or myself. Again, like she said, she's very active on Instagram, which is where we connected
Mm-hmm.
with her sharing information about nutrition and just about functional medicine, and really just wanting to dive more into, especially those of you who are in the group, or those that follow me and watch and want to know more about the relationship of the root cause. And so when you talk about functional medicine approach, that's exactly what it is. It's really just the root cause and not just food, nourishment, consumption, and then reaction. It's really just trying to dig deeper into what it is that you're experiencing when you consume food. So, again, reach out to Barb for that if you're interested. Her website again is barbsobel.com. So make sure you connect with her there. Barb, it's been amazing. Thank you. I could
Thank
go
you
on
so
and
much.
on and we could just talk. But this is a topic that I think most women really do want to get more information. And information is one thing, but if you're not able to apply it to what you're currently doing, if you can't really see yourself making these changes or understanding why you're making those changes, most of us will never make the change. And so, with the menopause mixers, we really try to come at it from different angles. So this isn't the first time that we've talked about weight gain. This isn't the first time we've talked about various foods that women should be consuming during the transition. But I really just wanted us to take this approach, which is about the functional medicine piece of it, and then just about the nourishment of it, and then again, the different preparation of the foods that we consume. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing your insights on that. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. And thank you all for joining me for tonight's Menopause Mixer. We will be back again on a Monday for another Menopause Mixer. And then make sure you ladies look in the group. It is pinned at the top of the group. I am looking for you all to, as part of the community, share some of your Minnow stories. So if you have not been able to access the form, I want you to go to bit.ly Minnow Squad Storytime. And if you have a unique perspective on your menopause transition or just want to be part of the discussion, we're going to have it in story time. So we'll have it in sort of a panel style discussion where you, as part of the community, get to share your voice and share with us your menopause story. So make sure that you go there or look for the link at the top of the group pinned Minnow Squad Story Time. We have only received a few forms completed. So we'll be pushing over the next week for you guys to get that back to us because we're going to have Minute Squad story time in February and in March. And so I would just love for you all to participate in that again because I enjoy doing the menopause mixers, but we are a community. Remember, you're the Minnow Squad. So I want for our voices to be amplified and heard as members of the group. So that's it for tonight. Thank you for joining me for the Minnow Mixer. And I look forward to again receiving your applications for the Minnow Squad Storytime and joining me again next Monday at 7 p.m. You all have a great evening.